Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another classic album review, and this time it is Rainbow on Stage, a live album from 1977 that features some of Ritchie Blackmore's most amazing guitar playing. So I'm going to give you an overview of the album itself. I'm going to dive into my memories and what it was like in 1977 to hear this for the first time. I'll also give you a look at the different versions that are available, and again give an overview of what I feel about how it fits into the overall Rainbow canon, or Ritchie Blackmore canon if you like. So if you're new to this record, this music, I'll do my best to inspire you to go off and listen to it. And if you've had this album in your collection for decades, hopefully there'll be something in here to reconjure memories that you've not thought of for a while, and let me know in the comments what you think. So first of all, let's just have a look at the release itself, the CDs that are available, and the overall package and the cover. Here we go. So this is a look at Rainbow Rising and the various different versions that I have, and the story of how I've accumulated these. I know there are many more, and many of you out there will have tons of them, but I think for many collectors or fans of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, this is suffice really. My first exposure to the album was this single, which also came out. This is a very limited edition picture sleeve. A lot of them came out of just a normal sleeve, polydor sleeve. And I remember my friends saying at the time, and I'll say this when I do the summary, mistreated on a single. And this did appear on some jukeboxes, Kill the King, Man on Silver Mountain, and Mistreated on the Polydor label from 1977, still part of Oyster and Deep Purple overseas then. An interesting collection of tracks as well, all edited, and because of the amount of, what is it? You're supposed to have about 4 to 6 minutes on the side of a single. This is a very quiet single, so on a jukebox, you could hardly hear it. This is the first pressing of the album, which I bought as soon as it came out. It was a gatefold sleeve, quite sparse inside, but some iconic pictures, especially of Ritchie, World Tour around the outside of the main picture. And then on the back, a lot of the focus on the kind of credits, if you like, was all to do with the Rainbow equipment, and especially the Rainbow itself, because, this was a big deal in those days. And then special thanks to lighting, stage crew, and the tracks as well. There were some kind of inner sleeves as well. This is the first one. You can see there pictures of the band on the road. Also a great picture of Dio on the phone, Jimmy Bain with his headphones, and then some live pictures on the other side. Some lovely pictures as well they are. And then on sides 3 and 4 was a big picture of Rainbow literally on stage, and then some smaller pictures of the band on tour, the management, etc. Some great pictures for great times. So that's the vinyl version. The next instalment for me was getting it on CD, and this was this version, which I think was remastered by Dennis M. Drake. I'm not quite sure of the year. This sounds fantastic, to be honest. I always thought it had a much more beefy sound. It's a very sparse CD reissue with the pictures on the inside of the original gatefold, nothing else at all, just the tracks and track length and all the credits, but no extra pictures. So that was the first version I had on CD. The next instalment was actually this one, which was a big event actually when it came out. When was this? If I remember rightly, it was can't remember now. 1990. And I remember in Kerrang saying, why have they waited this long? 1990, over 30 years ago. But it was only like 14 years, wasn't it? But this was a combination of tracks that were from the German tour, some of which were used on stage. Fat Box, and the production was, the remastering was okay, with a booklet, again from the time with all the dates, and all the memorabilia, and some great live pictures which at the time I'd not seen before. Some Ritchie pictures of him smashing his guitar up, and then obviously this is the connoisseur collection, so an advert for other things they were doing to do with the Purple family. That was the next one I got, and it was amazing to see the length of the true length of these tracks, because obviously on stage they were cut back quite a bit, and of course it had Stargazer on it. And next was the 2 CD deluxe edition, which I think was 2012 this came out. This is deluxe editions when they had this outer plastic sleeve. It's a 2 CD set, folding out with some memorabilia across there, and again the pictures from the original live album. Behind the discs was another picture from one of the inner sleeves from the original vinyl, and then there was a booklet with this as well, and I'll talk about this when we do the summary, and a proper story behind the album, which was very well written. And then we had I think it was a Japanese tour book was reproduced in the centre, which was really nice. And then, as Andy Francis wrote that in 2012, then the original album, then the bonus tracks, live from Glasgow, 9th of December 1976, and again the equipment, who's reissued it, etc. Carol Stevens, which is Ritchie's mother-in-law, was involved, remastering by Andy Pearce, and the picture again from the original gatefold, nicely produced. I'm not going to cover these in this particular review, but if you're into this, and I might mention this at the end, the 3 gigs to get, which were released separately from the, and they belong in this video in a way because they're from the 1976 tour, are the German ones released in their entirety. So Nuremberg, Deutsche Kölner Sporthall, and Dusseldorf. The track listings are slightly different, but this really is these are all fantastic 2 CD sets, really long tracks as you can imagine, but really worth seeking out. So there are 3 doubles, which I think you can still track down on eBay or Discogs. So that's a look at Rainbow on Stage versions I've got, or the 1976 tour. So now I'll give you my summary of what it was like at the time. So that's a quick look at the different CD versions that are available, and I'll kind of touch on what I think about them, the missed opportunities, etc., as we go along. But now let's go back to 1977. The album was actually released in July, 15th of July 1977 to be exact. My first experience of this record was at a rock disco, which was called Sabbath Rock, held near the Swan in Birmingham. And the DJ, sometimes they used to get advanced copies of things. That was quite a big thing back then. And this pub, it was on a Sunday night, it was called Sabbath Rock, and it all started with Paranoid at about 7:30, I think it was, and it went on till 10:30, and it was just like you went on the floor and you played your air guitars and stuff. And the DJ said, I've got something really special for you, everybody. I've been sent the new Rainbow live album, and I'm going to play you a track from an album that's going to be called Rainbow on Stage. And he played Mistreated. And you can remember how Mistreated starts on this album with that absolutely turbocharged, fast, on a single string, single note as he moves up the neck. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that from 1974 to 1976, 77-ish, Blackmore's guitar style had changed dramatically from Made in Japan and Who Do We Think We Are, Burn it started, but especially on the Burn tour, where a lot of solos started with this really fast, his hand was a blur, but it was quite simple as he was playing like a single note, but this became like his calling card for the next 2 years, and he does this on the start of Mistreated, and he has also had a lot of echo on the guitar, which meant that when he stopped each note, it kind of decade afterwards. It did this a lot in this time, especially right up until recent times, really. I'm thinking of like Bent Out of Shape. At the end of each lick there'd be kind of an echo, a decay, and he kind of played against that, and he played against this at the start of Mistreated, which sounded unbelievable. This is 1977. Punk, kids with spiky hair who only knew 3 chords were apparently going to sweep all this out the way. All these dinosaur bands, the bands that were still in their 20s. And the case here is that it was so powerful. This is a song, of course, well known for Deep Purple. It was David Coverdale's vehicle, a bit like Child in Time was Ian Gillan's. But when Dio comes in with that first line, the first line of the song, you just thought, wow, this is Dio's song now. For whatever goes on, and I know Coverdale resurrected it in Whitesnake a couple of years later, but here it took on a whole new meaning. When it came to the solo in the middle, it pulls back, and Blackmore does a masterclass in improvisation and control. At the time, being a mere 18-year-old, I kept waiting for him to suddenly let rip again like he did at the start, and he doesn't. So I had some of my friends either side of me going, dragging on a bit of this, innit? But once we get past that, and Dio comes in with that roar of angst, of heartbreak in his voice, and then we race towards the end, Blackmore turns everything up, and off we go. And I was mesmerised. I thought, I can't wait to get this album. Now, I haven't got much money. I'm an apprentice. And I think me and my friends were going off to Newquay in Cornwall for a holiday. So I couldn't really buy it then. But I remember going to a record shop in Newquay, and they got it on the racks. And we asked the guy in the shop, this is when you could go into a record shop and say, can you play a track from this, please? And he basically played the whole thing, sides 1, 2, 3 and 4. And so I thought, when I come home, I'm definitely going to get that. What was interesting was I didn't realise is that how short an album this was. It was a very short album, about 50 minutes, because the tracks, of course, were so long. The other thing to be aware of is how much we were looking forward to this record. It was also interesting that we'd only had these 2 albums, hadn't we, from Rainbow. I'd bought the first Rainbow album when I left school in 1975. It had some good tracks on it. But it was not perfect. I kind of said to my friends, it's a bit like Zeppelin and Purple, etc. It's that kind of thing. But it was kind of mismatched. Of course, and I've done a separate video on Rising. This was like the album of the year before, and so the ticket to get was to see Rainbow live, and of course we did. And I've mentioned this, how Robert Plant walked me to my bus stop. It was a massive event. Rainbow in 1976, playing Stargazer, Light in the Black. They were just at the top of the mountain. So when this album was announced, there was a feeling like, oh, there's a live album already. Surely there needs to be another studio album before you do a live album. I was thinking, like, in rock, Fireball, Machine Head. That's the way things usually went. But a live album already. And the other thing, of course, was Stargazer wasn't on it. Light in the Black wasn't on it. That was the first thing some of my friends said. Where's Stargazer? And that was, a bit of a disappointment. It has to be said. The other thing, of course, which I didn't understand at the time, is that behind the scenes, a lot of wheeling and dealing and skullduggery with slicing tapes was going on, because the way that the set list ran when you saw Rainbow live, they could not get that to fit on 4 sides of vinyl equally. This should have been a triple album, but of course triple albums, apart from ELP in 1974, is it, and Yes Songs 1973, I think, and the Grateful Dead somewhere, triple live albums was not going to be on the cards for Polydor as far as they saw it. You had 4 sides and that was it. So that meant there was some pretty serious editing went on here. Kill the King was the opener, and that was another song that got played at my local rock disco, Sabbath Rock. And it was an interesting song, because I remember when seeing them live when they opened with that, trying to work out what it was. I do think that Kill the King on Long Live Rock and Roll, the studio version, is a more cohesive version of the song. I think there's more space between the instruments. It's not. There's so much going on in the live version. It's hard to pick out sometimes what the hell is going on. And that's how it felt to me. So I've always preferred the studio version. But it was a great opener, and it was probably written as an opener. It was probably left off from, perhaps it was still, they were still working on it from, Rainbow Rising. But there again, it made this unique as well, because it had a track on it that was purely on Rainbow on Stage. The next track is medley, Man on a Silver Mountain, Blues, Starstruck even, and then back to Man on a Silver Mountain. Now, it's because I've got my other sets in front of me, this came a lot later on in the set, in reality. So sticking it here on side one felt odd, because this is the kind of thing that would be probably 2/3 of the way through the gig. When bands kind of like start to do a medley as songs they're not going to play the full version of, and they're messing around with different things, going into different instrumental sections. That's where that would sit, and that's where it did sit in the real set. But here it's still on side one, so it felt a bit disjointed. Man on a Silver Mountain was twice the speed of the studio version, and you started to see how he could easily switch from Man on a Silver Mountain to the Smoke on the Water riff, because it fits in with the rhythm of the song, which he did later on around the Straight Between My Eyes tour. There's also the solo guitar bit, which he started to really double down on in You Fall No One, but here it's kind of buried in amongst lots of other parts of almost like a crash ending. And then we go into the blues section, which of course he also did in You Fall No One in purple. And because it's this close into the start of the set, it does kind of, to me, not jar, but it felt like a bit of it was too soon to be kind of messing around with songs and doing this kind of stuff, which of course live it was further in. The other thing with the blues section here was Blackmore's guitar tone and the way he's playing is really good. Tony Carey's kind of answer back on the keyboards almost sound like he's not taking the mickey. It's almost a pastiche of blues. And I know some of my friends who were purists in this area were saying don't like it. It sounds like they're taking the piss a bit. I liked it, and in fact I prefer, once this is obviously the vinyl version, but on the CD version I actually feel it's beefier and actually sounds better. It then goes into a kind of short refrain of Starstruck, and then we're back into Man on Silver Mountain. So I was happy with it, but I was feeling, this could be so much better. And then I turned over and we got onto side two, which was Catch the Rainbow, 15 minutes and 35 seconds. Now this is not this song used to be even longer than this in some places, if I can find it. Let's have a look here, 15 minutes. Because the other things I've mentioned when you saw me go through the different versions are these three German versions from 1976, which are well worth checking out. I don't know if I can quickly just look at these. I think, let's have a look. Catch the Rainbow. Yeah, it's about 15, 17 minutes long. So this did take up the whole of side two. And whereas on Rainbow Rising, I think Ritchie Blackmore had shown a lot of restraint. It wasn't all about him. This was a band. The way that, Tarot Woman starts with keyboards. The end of Stargazer, which is almost... Stargazer is 8 minutes long, but 3 minutes of it is literally the ending. If you think about it, Ronnie James Dio ad-libbing and the orchestra comes in. Blackmore could have easily thought, I could be soloing over this, but he doesn't. The difference with when we get into the live arena with Ritchie Blackmore, this is all about Ritchie Blackmore. I mean, I remember seeing them on this tour and seeing that sometimes when Tony Carey got carried away and tried to go further with his keyboard solos, and the look that Blackmore gave him, as if to say, you've had your turn, this is me now, this is Rainbow, and this is Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. He might have dropped that bit, but it was Ritchie Blackmore's band. And Catch the Rainbow features some of the most sublime playing by Blackmore ever laid down. I've got these different versions from the German tour, etc., but I think the on-stage version is perfection. There's those parts where it kind of pulls back and Blackmore is just doodling away. You can visualise him with his eyes closed, just hanging over his blonde Stratocaster, which he played throughout this period. And then when it just comes to the right bit, he probably gives a visual indication to Cozy Powell. Cozy Powell comes in with a thundering drum roll, and they're off and running, and and Blackmore just he's on fire. Notes flying everywhere, all of them on target, interweaving amongst the Ronnie James Dio's ad-libs, every one of them landing deeply on your heart, and it just takes you further forward and you just want it to go on, and it does. It's just fantastic. And it just feels like it goes round in a loop, Catch the Rainbow in some ways. You think, oh, do that again, and it does. Just fantastic. A whole side. This is, again, this golden age of rock music where musicians just could stretch out without thinking, is this too much? It's not too much. Mistreated was side 3. Now, this was short. This was literally 13 minutes long. I remember looking at the dead wax on the vinyl and thinking, this can't be long, and it wasn't. 13 minutes for a side of vinyl was short. And because the whole thing was 50 minutes, you think, well, surely, where's the rest of it? But of course, the songs are so long that they left off. They couldn't fit them on. It's just the way it was. Mistreated, as the years have rolled by, I again think this is just perfection. The solo that I thought he meandered a little bit too much when I first heard it was not the case at all. It works now. I just absolutely love the control and precision and the feel and the whole way he just moves into this groove, and the bass and the drums and the Tony Carey, they're just there in the moment. They could have rolled on and the side would have been a bit longer. I remember, and I showed you this in the when I looked in depth just at the start of the video, buying this and thinking, gosh, as I said, I've got Mistreated on a single, and I remember it appearing on the jukebox in my local pub, but of course it was so long for a single, it was so quiet on the jukebox. But it was amazing to think that Mistreated as a single, it was just a thing. The next side, the last side, of course, is 16th Century Greensleeves, and lots of my friends who played guitar back then, were homing in on the start of that as he played Greensleeves. And it was like this wizard that Ritchie Blackmore was to us back then, playing this beautifully constructed version of Greensleeves before it comes in with the main track, which was from the first Rainbow album. It's a great version. I have to say, Dio on this whole album is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I've said before that Stargazing Light in the Black is probably Dio's finest moments ever recorded. And on this album, I think what I'm trying to say is that when I saw them with Elf, I saw Elf support Deep Purple. It didn't really register that the singer was any better than just a rock singer. Didn't enter my mind. The first Rainbow album, I took notice. I took notice on the way he did the ad-libs on the end of Man on a Silver Mountain, which got me through lots of tricky moments when I was just left school, starting work in factories and stuff. And then of course on Rainbow Rising, Ronnie James Dio became one of the best rock vocalists of all time. That same year, this same period, Ronnie James Dio became much more than that, and still is one of the finest rock metal vocalist ever. But I think this is also, next to Heaven and Hell, a live album, but it just shows the command and the power he had and belief he had in these songs. Think about, he had a lyrical style that he loved. Mistreated was not that. He didn't do these kind of pretty songs about love, etc. But the way he tackled this song, originally written and recorded by Deep Purple, just showed how he could interpret other people's material and make it his own. So we've come to the end of 16th Century Greensleeves, and now on to Still I'm Sad. Now this was obviously the highlight of Ritchie Blackmore Rainbow, because it was an instrumental tucked away on the end of side 2, which featured again some of Blackmore's most fieriest, brilliant playing. Now the riff that he kind of incorporated into Still I'm Sad, he'd been playing with on You Fool No One. And in fact, the best version of that kind of riff was actually on the Live in London version of You Fool No One. Listen to the way that starts, with the way he had the echo. He never repeated that. But he obviously liked the riff and what he was doing so much that here it was on Still I'm Sad. And this doesn't have Cozy Powell's drum solo. There was no room. So it's edited out very well. To be honest, you don't notice it. And the way this comes to an end is just rock perfection to me. The way that Dio plays off Blackmore's, not bombastic, I suppose, but powerful chords and playing, the way that they worked together. I know it was not going to last that much longer. It wasn't going to last longer one the other year, was it, with Long Live Rock and Roll? And even then it was changing. But here, they were just brothers in arms. The whole band. I mean, Cozy Powell. I'd known him from his Rack singles, and I'd just thought, he's a drummer, but took much notice of him. By the time we get here, he had a specific sound, Cozy Powell. You knew it was him. And I do feel that in later bands he was with, he wasn't as good as he is in this. I think this captures Rainbow on Stage, captures Rainbow. There are some misgivings about the track listing, but as I've said, it is what it is. But the CD remasters, especially the 2 CD version, the 2 CD version is a whole. The second disc is from Japan on December the 9th, Osaka. Although Catch the Rainbow is actually the same version that's on disc 1 because of a mix-up on the tapes. But it is great to hear this. It's a shame that Stargazer and Light in the Black aren't there, because they were recorded. So, which is why I mention, that these 3 CDs from Germany do include Stargazer, but not Light in the Black. Rainbow on Stage was recorded in Cologne, Nuremberg, Munich, Osaka and Tokyo. And this is where my notes here are coming from, this fantastic book which I reviewed on the Now Spinning magazine channel, called Rainbow, A Visual Biography by Jerry Bloom. It's absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to bring your attention to something that's written in this book, which is really interesting, because it talks about this, because this came out in 2012, and it's great. I love it. But like many of these things, could it be done better? Yeah, it's got a great booklet, as you saw. But just after they got it out there, they found some other stuff, didn't they? So it says here, the 2 more albums, Universal's revamping of the back catalogue for Rainbow, released 2 disc deluxe versions of On Stage and Long Live Rock and Roll, which will be the subject of another video. On Stage was initially going to be a triple, with a complete Japanese show from either Osaka, with A Light in the Black. From the matinee Tokyo show dropped in. Alternatively, the matinee show itself, which excluded Stargazer, with the intention of dropping that song in from another show. Problems arose when the individual who'd been trusted with the archive material took about a year to arrange for the tapes to be transferred. Universal were also told that no full shows existed and some of the reels were missing, including all of those which included any versions of Stargazer. Get the German shows, it's on there. More worryingly, the whereabouts of the entire Tokyo Matinee show were and still are unknown. Universal had been told that most of the Osaka show from the 8th was amongst the archives, so it was decided to use this as the bonus material. Everything had been set up, but when the tapes were finally delivered, they included just some of the songs from the evening Tokyo show, which were then used for the bonus disc, although parts of it duplicated the original release. Catch the Rainbow. Sadly, the sleeve notes were not changed to reflect this, as Universal, over a year behind schedule with the project, was keen to just get it out as soon as they possibly could. And since 2012, all of the tapes that had been previously archived had now been transferred to Abbey Road's archive, and frustratingly, they include the full show for Osaka on the 8th, although some reels from the other shows are missing. So that means 2012. We're now in 2024. That's 12 years. Now, in the life of a rock fan of our age group, if you're in my vintage, that was last week, wasn't it? But for you younger viewers and listeners, that was a lifetime ago. So isn't it time that Rainbow on Stage was pulled out of the vaults and tweaked, and so we could have a version of On Stage that includes Light in the Black and Stargazer and Do You Close Your Eyes, all in the right order? Could that be a box set, a 4-disc vinyl set, a 3 CD version with a big book with lots of pictures from the tour? Wouldn't that be absolutely amazing? So that is Rainbow on Stage from 1977. I played it just the other day, and it sounds amazing to me. Some of Ritchie Blackmore's most incredible playing. Soon after this, when we go into the Longley rock and roll period, he started to pull back. He did not stretch out as far as this. And when we got into the Joe Lynn Turner period, he might have done Catch the Rainbow, other things, but the songs became more truncated, as Ritchie was obviously, he wanted to be successful. This got to number, was 11 in the charts, but in America, it didn't. He was seeing his returns go down and down. He was funding all of this himself. He needed hits. He wanted to be, he didn't have to think about this with Deep Purple, but now he was thinking about the commercial aspect of this. In Jerry's book, it talks about how the fact that he was having to bail out other members of the band who didn't have the same amount of money as him. So he was starting to think commercially. His accountant was onto him as well, and so the whole focus started to change. But in this period, Ritchie played from the heart and what he wanted to play, with no commercial restraints at all, purely in the moment of the music and the style of guitar playing that was literally just pouring out of his fingers at this time. So thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and thank you for all of your support. It really means a great deal to me. Please subscribe if you haven't already, share, tell everyone you've ever known about Now Spinning Magazine, and I shall return with another video looking back at Purple and Rainbow and lots of other classic rock stuff as well, as I focus a lot on what is already in our collections and appreciating what we already have. Again, looking back at personal memories and how the music has touched us and carried us through our lives. So stay safe, keep spinning those discs, remember music is the healer and the doctor, and I shall see you all very, very soon.